did just purchase the world's cheapest 997 turbo. Welcome back to the vlog. This shirt has to be worn today. This is my 2007 Porsche 997 911 Turbo. If you've been following along, I had to sell my 1986 Porsche 911 to obviously purchase this car. This car has quite a few miles on it, but I did just purchase the world's cheapest 997 Turbo. This is going to be a little bit probably longer than you're probably used to, but we have to take time. I'm going to tell you in this video why not only I purchased this car, what kind of made the whole deal work. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I paid for this car because I don't talk about my own personal finances here, but you can go out to the internet and figure out approximately what I paid, or at least find the cheapest one and then assume that I paid less, because I did. I looked for about 6 months, almost a year actually, to actually source this car and find this car. So, having said that, I can tell you, and I've confirmed with several other enthusiasts across the world, this is the world's cheapest 997. Now, the reason it's the cheapest is that it has a ton of miles. I actually found this car through PCA.org, the Porsche Club of America's website. They have a classifieds section there that you can, buy and sell and trade. Parts, cars, race cars, I mean, anything and everything Porsche is there. And so I was going through that site about 2.5, 3 months ago, and I found this car actually out in Denver, Colorado. And so the gentleman, I called him pretty much immediately as soon as I saw it, and also sent him an email and said, I want to purchase this car from you. Now, at the time, I had not sold the 86 911, so we were in the process of putting that on Bring a Trailer, and there was some backlog because they were months and months out. But at the end of the day, we did end up selling that car through Bring a Trailer. Very happy with the results that we got there. And if you're looking for one of these types of cars, it's a great outlet for that. So this won't be a commercial for them or anything else. I'm not sponsored, obviously, but I found this car through PCA and reached out to the guy and said, I'm very interested in the car. What can you tell me about it? Let's have a little dialogue. And then I ultimately made him an offer. He rejected that offer. My shrewd negotiation skills did not work in my favor for this particular car, at least as much as I wanted them to. Now, I did pay less than he was asking for. And we actually did meet somewhere in the middle of my initial offer and his original ask. But we're going to go around the whole car. I'm going to show you kind of everything that attracted me to this particular car, but also what has been done to it, and what makes it the cheapest one. But certainly why I think this is a great value for a Porsche fan out there, and why I ultimately chose this car and to leave the air-cooled vintage, kind of feel that most people love and lust after, as I did for many, many years. But this car has a particularly special place in my heart because of my first real engagement and interaction with Porsche. So first and foremost, obviously it's black. There is no metallic, and it did have to have some detailing and work done to it before I was feeling good about presenting it to you guys. But yeah, it is a flat black. There is no metallic. It's not flat. It has gloss to it, obviously. But we did have to go through and paint correct this car pretty heavily because there was a ton of swirl marks all over the hood, the fenders, the doors. I mean, it was just terrible. And it's one of the reasons that I actually flew out to Denver to look at this car in person, because every picture that the guy had, there was huge cloud cover and you just couldn't see what the hood, what the bumper looked like. And so I'm going to give you its imperfections, and then we're going to talk about why this is actually the perfect car for me. Kind of hard to probably make out, but right in this area, we have a little issue, a little chip that is down into the plastic of the bumper there, so you can kind of see the imperfection there. The bumper is not perfect by any stretch. I mean, this lip here, you know, is eventually gonna have to be replaced. Fairly inexpensive though, so that's good news. And obviously it is kind of a matte finish, it's just plastic. And then of course you have the painted surface here. So, but I think it's kind of a nice contrast. I have seen, you know, some of them color matched and stuff. I don't know that it's really worth the effort and energy because this thing scrapes on everything. And the car, as far as I can tell, and as far as I know, having been up now underneath the car, is stock height, at least for a turbo. So anyway, there's that area. Little minor chips kind of here and there. I mean, nothing too catastrophic though. My son, after about 3 days, I think 4 days, my wife's car normally sits right here. He opened the door and it put a dent in it, but when we got the paint correction done, we got the dent pulled, the paint just has to be touched up. But I mean, overall, you see very, very well taken care of, especially when you know shortly here the mileage of this car, you're gonna be like, what? Because that's how I was. I looked at a lot of these cars. I looked at a really interesting one actually down in Florida, you know, pictures and close-up video and stuff, that had 65,000 miles, and it was not even half of this good a condition. I mean, there were peppering chips all over the bumper and the hood. Even the front fenders had some issues, but this car is, I mean, night and day above that car. Now, there's still some spider cracking and a little bit of, you know, issues that we just couldn't work out with the correction, but we did the full correction, and then we did ceramic coat everything so that it's nice and easy to wash. So we'll move inside here real quick, and this is really ultimately what attracted me to this car. Obviously the color is not ideal for me. I don't like washing cars by any stretch of the imagination. But moving inside, this is one of the cool features that I really liked about this. So this is all carbon fiber. The entire, what's going on with my light there, sorry. So all the way from the back console, the whole center console, the e-brake, the little, they call that banana there, I don't know why. But I mean, the whole thing is carbon fiber. You still have this up here, the steering wheel is carbon fiber. All this was a factory option, except that when it came from Porsche, all of this carbon fiber tends to delaminate and crack and just has a ton of issues. It kind of turns yellow too, if you've ever seen one. In the engine compartment here that comes with the factory, what do they call it, airbox. So heavy. Those shocks do work. Occasionally you'll see one here with a carbon fiber intake that has cracked or delaminated or turned yellow, and obviously you got to get that replaced eventually, or at least update it. So this is all MA carbon that reproduces all of this and is a much higher quality, but also looks 10 times better. So, and obviously no cracking, no issues there. It's a little dirty in places that I just haven't been able to clean up just yet. But overall, the interior, I mean, see the bolsters here, a little bit of cracking here on this side bolster, but for the most part, and again, considering the mileage of this car, it is in fantastic shape. Moving to the door panels, because it's kind of hard to see on that one. This one's a lot easier to see. It did have the carbon fiber handles there, but the gentleman that I bought it from actually replaced it with these GT2 Alcantara inserts, door cards here, which I think just totally set it apart. And in addition, the sunroof and the headliner in there are also Alcantara. So, but I mean, carbon fiber here down to the sills. I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful option in my opinion that came, and this is back in 2007. So this is like, this was a big deal back then. So anyway, here's why this is the cheapest one though. That's right, 104,000 miles. This car is in fantastic shape for, I mean, I've seen so many 90 and 80,000 mile cars that quite frankly were destroyed compared to this. Now, This car has its flaws, don't get me wrong. In the interior, you can see there's a small variance between the color here. This is actually the factory color. This was an aftermarket reproduction that he had put in. There was a Pioneer radio that I still do have that came with the car. I'll probably end up putting that back in because there's, I think, some Apple CarPlay and Bluetooth and just a more modern version, but it also takes up more of this, and I just don't like all these buttons. It's just something else to wear, which, speaking of wear, it's kind of hard to see here, but the wear on the AC buttons is typically one of the worst places here for these cars. There is some light leather wear here and there. I mean, it is 13 years old and it does have 104,000 miles on it. I mean, this is the worst of it around the windows there on the driver's side, and then this is gonna be really hard to make out, but a little bit of tearing here in the leather cup holder cover in the dashboard. But I already replaced this glove box lid because there was several scratches, really deep gouges here in it, so we went ahead and replaced that. What's interesting about this actually is that you can just replace this lid or you can replace the whole glove box. I ended up just replacing the lid because that was really all that was damaged, but this is the same part from the Boxster, from the Cayman, from the 911, the Turbo. All of them are the exact same, and of course we just had to make sure it was black leather. So that has already been done and cleaned up the interior completely, because again, the only issues I have here are leather there and a little bit of rubber or leather, you know, rubbing and cracking here, edges of these. And I'm sure that when he pulled this whole door panel apart to put the GT2 Alcantara in there, it probably didn't go back perfectly, but they do work. In fact, everything works in this car. The radio works, all the speakers work, there's no buzzing, there's no humming, there's no chatter, there's no vibration in the dash. Of course, Sport Chrono in here. So, I mean, when you consider that this car is 13 years old, but again, the mileage, I literally tried to find not the highest mileage, but certainly something that would be in my price range. And so if you go out and look for one of these cars right now, you see them in the mid 50s, even in the mid 60s. And of course, for a super rare color, super low mileage, say 10, 15, 20,000 miles, you're gonna pay upwards of $80,000 to $90,000 for one of these cars. Now again, I'm not gonna tell you what I paid for this car, but if you go look, I'm gonna tell you that it was anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 cheaper than all of those cars. I'm just telling you. I looked at one car down in Florida that I told you about earlier that was $55,000 that was not in this good a shape. So one of the issues or things that we do have to figure out here pretty soon, whether we're gonna powder coat these or just refinish them back to this original finish. I've always liked the look of these turbo wheels. They are 19s and the tires are relatively new. I mean, they have about 2,500, maybe 3,000 miles on them at this point, but they still have these little rubber, you know, whatever they call these little knobs, they're indicator knobs. When those get cracked and dried off, you know that, you know, you're getting kind of into some wear life, but you can see there's plenty of tread in here. But as far as these wheels go, the original owner was actually in Plano, Texas, and I've got to believe that the sand, dirt, dust, grime, street, whatever, just really ate it up. And this is actually the worst of all of the wheels. I mean, there's a little bit of curb rash in here, so I'm contemplating, and I'd love to hear y'all's opinion on this. Do we go back with the original polished look here, or do we do it in this kind of gunmetal grayish color that I think would just look amazing? I mean, that color on all four wheels, refinished and powder coated to that finish, you know, something with a little bit of shine, easy to clean, that we can maybe ceramic coat, I think would just be a fantastic look. Because, and originally I was thinking black, just because black car, black wheels, it could look really sinister. And then you got the red, you know, Porsche calipers there, that one is just ginormous. But I thought that would be kind of a nice little offset of like gunmetal gray. I even thought about gold or red for a little while, but the red we got away from. This is a nice look, and it's certainly classic and very kind of just how it came, right? But I've never seen one with gunmetal rims that are that like inside color with all four wheels, completely just one color. And I think that would really clean just the whole look of the car up. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say though down in the comments. If we move into the frunk, for all you Porsche enthusiasts out there, or if you're not, for the front hood here, the trunk, really well taken care of, nice and clean. I mean, a little bit of, you know, staining and maybe sunspots from sitting in the Texas sun out there, but the battery compartment there, all nice and done. I mean, anytime you see all of these little fittings and clips and everything, to me, that's just the sign of a good car, something that's been really well maintained. But of course, back in '07, they had CDs, and a lot of them. You kids today probably don't know what a CD is. Compact disc. People used to listen to music that were on these discs and you put them in. Anyway, this is the DVD navigation. Does have navigation, does have the disc in here actually. Oh, it did. When I was in Colorado, there it is. Looking at this car, I was like, oh good, it's got the 2020 map in there. Which I don't know why they're still doing that, but they are. But anyway, probably going to end up upgrading all of the trunk light here, the interior lights to the LED, just to give it a little more modern look with that kind of clear, not clear, but blue, you know, tone to it or whatever. And back here, kind of the same thing, an LED light there, an LED light for the license plate here. So to the engine, for those of you that are not Porsche fans or know nothing about these cars, the reason that I bought this car is that this is a twin turbo flat six. So this is the 3.6 liter. It's the Metzger engine, pumping out about, I've heard 450 and 470. I'm always gonna go with the higher number. So this car has 470 horsepower. No, I think it's somewhere in there, but it's a ton. But in addition, it's four-wheel drive. So all four wheels are turning, all four wheels are grabbing at the road, just trying to hold on. So a couple issues that were resolved before I purchased this car. First, kind of starting up top here for the power steering pump, that lid right there was actually leaking. There's a gasket in there, and the lid had actually started leaking and actually went down onto the valve covers, but has since been replaced. All the oil been cleaned up. There's a little bit of residual stuff there, but that's not a big deal. The bigger deal with these engines is the coolant lines. So Porsche, and all of their infinite engineering knowledge and know-how, designed this engine with a pretty massive coolant system. As you can imagine, twin turbo, a lot of heat. Obviously the engine's in the rear, so you're not getting the benefit of kind of forced induction in the front, if you will. But there are two massive radiators on the front. They put these little elbows on the coolant system that were actually like plastic. Well, after 13 years, that plastic becomes really brittle. It heats up, it cools down, it heats up, it cools down. Ultimately, what the prior seller, the guy in Colorado did for this car was he took the engine out. He sent the entire cooling system out to California to BBI, which is a huge, I mean, you guys probably know as Porsche enthusiasts. Sent it out to California, had BBI actually weld all these stainless steel elbows in place, which ended up saving me, I've heard, anywhere as low as 6,000 and as high as like 15,000 to go through and do that one modification to keep it from overheating. Obviously a ton of heat back here. Finally, the cams have also been what they call pinned. So there's this little hole in the camshaft that you have to, anyway. So that's the engine. The only modification that has really been done to this car, there's no tune, there's no extra horsepower, there's nothing. I mean, it's got a new air filter in it, but it's not Canon or anything else, is the exhaust. This is a GMG exhaust, which if you know anything about them, they basically build race car parts. So this exhaust is just amazing, and I'll give you a little cold start here real quick. So while this isn't the lowest mileage or perfectly protected Porsche, it is the perfect Porsche for me. If you saw my red car and if you went through that video and saw all the little issues and a lot of that was a result of me. I drove that car a lot, and I put it on the track and I did autocross and we went to the mountains, as you guys saw in several different videos here. But this one, I've already put, I haven't had this car 2 weeks. Tomorrow, actually, Wednesday, yes, will be 2 weeks, and I've already put 200 miles on this car. So it came to me from Colorado with 104,170 miles. Now it has 104,380. So I've actually put 210 miles in only 2 weeks on this car. Now, I have not done anything outside of the paint protection. That's it. That's all I've done here. I do have plans for it. Again, back to the wheels and some spacers and just stuff that will make it kind of pop a little bit more. And I will kind of make it my own, to be honest with you. The wheels are, to me, the biggest issue at this point, just because they're so unsightly. The two rear wheels in particular, because this thing is so wide, they find curbs and there's issues with them. But we're going to get those resolved. It's not that expensive to get them powder coated, but eventually we will have to talk about that and address that at some point. The other reason that this car is perfect for me is because I plan on driving this car a lot. In fact, I have a goal that I haven't really told anyone about, so you guys are the first to really find out. I'm trying to put 5,000 to 10,000 miles a year on this car, which at my current rate shouldn't be an issue. But that's a lot of mileage, and it's certainly expensive to maintain these cars. But I got this car because I wanted to drive it. I wanted to enjoy it. And with all the ceramic and eventually with some film and stuff, I'll be able to drive this thing 100% guilt-free, not feel bad about driving it, not feel bad about putting the mileage on it, because it's already got a ton of miles on it. And again, as the cheapest 997 turbo in the country, probably in the world, I only have limited access to, worldwide sites. But based on everything I was able to find and see, this is by far the cheapest 997 turbo. For me, this car and these cars in particular kind of hold a special place in my heart too, because so obviously he loves it. I mean, you could just see the excitement in his face and in his voice when I pulled up for the first time. I mean, he just loved it. So, and I am so excited to share kind of what we do with it, but also what we, where we go with it. In fact, I'm planning a trip with my wife. She doesn't know, so don't tell her. In September for our 13th wedding anniversary. We got married in September 2007. So I'm planning to take her up to kind of like the Asheville area. We're gonna do some of the Blue Ridge Parkway, but again, she doesn't know, so don't tell her. There's just this beautiful, if any of you have ever been on the Blue Ridge Parkway, beautiful overlooks and scenery. I mean, and of course, fantastic roads. So, but I'm so excited. That trip would not have been quite as much fun in the 86. Again, no air conditioning, which God only knows what September is gonna look like in this year. But it's probably going to be somewhere in the 90s if everything remains true or historically correct. But I'm so excited to be able to do that trip in this car. And the other car, I'm sure it would have been just fine mechanically, but it's just not as comfortable as this car is. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that are like, but Matt, that old air-cooled car is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. I loved that car. I hated to get rid of that car, but she would not let me keep both. And nor could I afford to keep both. But I think this is just going to open up the next chapter of my Porsche experience. And really that's one of the reasons that I got into this brand, was to try different models, to try different years, and to figure out different generations of what I liked and what I didn't like. And while I loved the 86 air-cooled car, this car is just a different experience. For me, this car represents something a little bit differently too. I've worked really hard over the last number of years to build my lawn care business, my landscaping business, to a point that I was able to sell it and build it to a successful point that someone wanted to buy it. I mean, those are two different things, right? And we'll go into that some other time. But in addition, in real estate, for me to be able to more than double my business this year and to be headed on a trajectory that I never imagined possible, much due to a lot of you, honestly, because of your referrals and your recommendations and just the social proof that you've put into me, not just with these videos, but with Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and for you to enjoy the type of content that I'm putting out. It really just means a lot to me. And so, I am super blessed to be able to even think about owning this car, much less to actually have it here. So to thank you guys would just not be even close to enough. But I genuinely thank you guys for the opportunity to be able to share my life and share this content with you guys. and to hopefully give you some sort of inspiration or encouragement that it can be done. I mean, if you told me 13 years ago when we first got married that this was gonna be a reality, I would have laughed in your face, because it wasn't that I didn't believe in myself, it was just that it seemed so unattainable at the time. And so when I was going through that first road show, a buddy of mine used to work for Porsche. He invited me out, and I drove this car and was just like, this is amazing. I can't believe this is legal, honestly. Like, this car is so fast. It's terrifying, actually. I've owned 22, 23 cars now. This by far is the only car that scares the living crap out of me. And I've had Mustangs and really powerful, American muscle cars or whatever. This car is terrifying. It's the only car that you get in and you drive and you're like, this could go really bad, really fast. But as I said, I'm so honored to be able to share this with you guys and all the adventures that are gonna come along with it. If you have a suggestion for a mod, or if you know of something that we could do to this car to make it different, unique, stand out more, and I don't mean red wheels, I mean something that would make it more enjoyable to drive, for instance. I mean, I love it. I love the way that it is, but I know there's a ton of people doing crazy things to these cars to make them faster and everything. I'm still getting used to it. This is a big, big difference from a 1986 911 with maybe 200 horsepower at the crank and maybe, I don't know, 150 horsepower at the wheel. I mean, this thing probably has over 300 at the wheel. So we're doubling the horsepower, adding a little bit of weight, about 1,000 pounds. But I mean, it's an insane value. And that was the other thing that really attracted me to this car, was that when I bought my car, the 86, they had reached a plateau in value, and they were starting to appreciate. And so my same buddy that worked at Porsche had just purchased his about 5 or 6 years before I purchased mine. And he got to a point where he was seeing the trends go back up. And I thought, well, if I want to get one, I got to get one now. And if I had purchased one 2 years prior, I probably could have paid about half price for it. But in order to be able to parlay that into this particular car was a huge, huge success. And for those of you that know about the air-cooled cars and what they've done over the last number of years, you know that you start to get a point where this car is less valuable than some of the air-cooled cars. And my 86 had 152,000 miles on it, so it was no spring chicken by any stretch. But again, had been driven, get it? Had been well loved and well maintained, and going through the transmission and stuff last year, having the synchronizers replaced, having fourth gear basically gutted and replaced, and then having a new clutch and flywheel installed was a huge, huge, huge expense for me. And I obviously didn't plan on replacing the clutch. I knew the transmission would have to be gone through at some point, but to be able to take that investment, put it in that car, and then be able to sell that car to ultimately get this one was just amazing. So again, as I said, one of my big things with this car and with even the next car is going to be to enjoy all that this brand has to offer. People have often asked me, well, why not Lamborghini and why not Ferrari? For me, there's just something so pure about these cars, and honestly, the maintenance is one of the biggest things for me. I don't like spending a ton of money on cars. And you're like, what? This is a Porsche. It's ridiculously expensive to spend a ton of money on this car just to make it what it is. But I feel as though that's an investment that I could probably drive this car for the next 5 to 10 years and continue to rack up 50 to 100,000 miles on it, and actually either drive it for free or potentially even make money on it. But that's not my goal here. I'm not trying to flip this thing in 6 months and double my money. That's very, very unrealistic. What I am trying to do with this car is actually enjoy it, number one, share it with my family, create some unbelievable memories with road trips and everything else, and then ultimately, sell it and find something else that scratches that itch. And I may sell this car, I may not at some point, because to me, this is like the perfect Porsche. The interior is small, still feels like a vintage air-cooled car. The outside is bigger, so it's certainly safer for a family. But the power and the way that this energy comes out of this car is unlike anything I've ever experienced before. So anyway, thank you guys so much for coming along to the introduction to this car. I really, really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for watching, for commenting, for liking, subscribing. It really just means so much to me, and I can't wait to share the car shows and the drives and the mountains and the autocross and everything that we're going to do with this car, because again, it's going to be driven and enjoyed. So I can't wait for you guys to come back, check out some more of the car content that I've got over here, or even some of the real estate stuff that I've got over here. But thanks again for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.